Hello and welcome to the Queen's Table. Obviously, I am not a queen, but my name is Phil. I am the podcast doctor, and I do have somebody very special here today who I want to introduce you to, who is behind all of this. So we're going to learn all about this podcast. We're going to learn all about Tooley Community Development Group. We're going to learn all about their aspirations and their future for you, what you're going to see here on this podcast. So I want to introduce you to Karen Tooley.
Hello. Thank you, Phil.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am super excited to be here. I am, like I just told you a second ago, I am honored to be invited on the Queen's Table, although I am not a queen. You know, it is inspiring to be in the presence of so many inspiring people.
Awesome. So glad to have you.
Yes, thank you. So let's start from the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. I'll probably blend some personality questions alongside with the community development group questions and all that. But first, I want to know about the community group. So tell us how you started it, why you started it, and where you're kind of at now.
Okay. So I left Mims when I was 17 and went to Florida A&M. And after that, just a series of moves and a series of events in my life. Landed in Sarasota in 2011. I was working for a housing authority over there. Lost my job at the housing authority and landed back in Mims again. So what struck me when I got back to Mims was that not a whole lot had changed. I was born and raised here, and I didn't see any progress happening. So it really hit me kind of funny that I could be gone for that long and come back and not really see a whole lot of progress. So I, first of all, of course, worked on getting myself together, getting my feet back under me again, and ended up at Kennedy Space Center, was there for 7 years. And I guess the timing was just right in 2020 with everything that was happening that year. Mm-hmm. I felt like the timing was right to go ahead and step away from that. I never felt like this is where I'm supposed to be at Kennedy Space Center.
You felt out of place?
Yeah. I was not. I mean, I wasn't an engineer. I wasn't a tech person, a STEM person. That just wasn't me.
Or an astronaut.
Right. I was not an astronaut. So I didn't feel like it was necessarily me. It was a good kind of stopgap. Like I needed that income right then, but I didn't think I would be there forever. And I didn't know when I was going to step away. 2020 was just like, it was the moment. Wow. So I left there and stepped out on just faith. Faith.
You said that with some cringe in your voice. You can't say faith and then be like, faith?
Yeah. That I think there's still this just like inside of me when I think about the fact that I was very comfortable. I was not a civil servant, but I was a very comfortable contractor, right? Mm-hmm. And I think my trajectory was up at that point. I had become I went out there as like a training coordinator. I had to get a promotion to become a secretary.
Whoa. Okay.
And before I ever went to Kennedy, I had been, executive director, vice president, director of this, and I came in that far at the bottom, and I had started progressing up. I became a communications analyst. I started doing some strategic planning. I had nowhere to go but up, but that just wasn't what God had for me. So I ended up leaving there, stepping out into nothing, and just sort of building as I was walking, I guess I should say. And so we've been extremely blessed in that we've been able to procure grants. This year, I have been able to start paying myself a salary. I have a staff of 5, I think.
Okay.
And we're becoming known for being the community development group in North Brevard, in this area, especially north of Titusville.
So when you say, or when you hear someone say community development group, mm-hmm. what does that actually entail?
Community development, it is exactly what it sounds like. A lot of people would like to kind of pigeonhole it into one area or another, like either you have to be building affordable housing or you have to be doing this, that, or the other. We have 4 pillars that we operate on, and those pillars were based on information that we gleaned from past surveys of the community. They were also based on just what we found out about the community when we just asked questions, right? What does this community want? What do we need? And so it's economic development, affordable housing, education, and history, arts, and culture. Those are our 4 pillars. And community development is basically building a community.
Okay. And so let's actually talk about some of the pillars here. One of the ones that struck me is the Black history and theology. Right? How do you see the role of faith and spirituality in this work?
Quite frankly, a lot of the people that I come across in this work and is our ministers, and it's an extension of their ministry, and I have so much respect for that, because as ministries, if we don't get outside of the 4 walls, if what I'm expecting of a community is to come inside of my church and let me preach to them every Sunday, I'm not sure that I'm really doing the work of ministry. The work of ministry, the stuff that Jesus did and the stuff that we're responsible for doing, the Bible talks about how true religion is to reach out to the fatherless and the widows, and community development does that. Especially in the work that we do here in East Mims. I have 2 case managers that go out. We don't wait for the people to come to us. They go out, they knock on doors, they canvass the community, and they say, hey, is there something we can help you with? To me, that is the work of ministry. And if your faith is not leading you to act, if it's not leading you to help somebody, we need to talk about your faith.
That's true. How's the community responded to that?
It's very interesting.
You know where I'm getting with this, all right?
No. Tell me where you're getting with it.
Well, honestly, communities that are predominantly Black or mainly faith-based. You see a lot of it is faith-based, but a lot recently in these times, there's been a separation.
Right.
So how has the community responded to you reaching out through a spiritual point of view?
And I think that it's important to note that we're not reaching out from a spiritual platform.
Okay.
So the community development group is not the church. It is not. We're not going out there knocking on the doors and saying, "Hey, I want to get you saved." We're going out and knocking on the doors and saying, "Hey, do you need help with your light bill? Hey, are you struggling with your rent?" We want to do whatever we can do to make sure that you don't end up homeless or your family's not hungry. So we're not putting faith front and center. What we're doing is an expression of our faith, but it's not us proselytizing.
Okay, here's a spicy question,
Okay.
Are there any strings attached with that?
There are no strings attached.
Okay.
There are none.
Because maybe some people may feel that, oh, they're going to be giving this, but then they're going to want something in return.
No, what I want, I'll say it from 2 different aspects. What I want is for this community to be strong and self-sufficient. That's what I want. I want to see that. I want to see us grow, and I want to see us have spaces of community where we come together, we understand each other, we talk, we hear each other, and our children are seeing a strong community that supports and cares for each other. That's what I want. And on one hand, on the other hand, I want the community to understand and to understand what we're offering, to take advantage of it so that we can continue to be a conduit that brings funding into this community.
Okay. So let's actually talk about the community, right? You're in Mims,
yes,
which is in Brevard County. We are in Brevard County, right?
Yes.
This is Brevard County, Florida. So we're on the east coast of Florida here. You stated earlier you jetted out of here as soon as you graduated, right?
I did.
Because you felt that nothing really changed, and when you came back, you still kind of felt the same.
Right.
Why do you think that is in this community in particular?
I think that's a really good question. And I think one of the things is that this community, we have such an amazing history with the Harry T. Moore story, with all of the families. I like to say Harry T. Moore was like a shining star in our history, but there was a constellation of families and other supporters that supported Mr. Moore. So we have some strong families. When I grew up here, there were people that, and I remember them being HBCU grads. I remember them wearing their sorority and fraternity paraphernalia. There were educated, strong, smart Black people as I was growing up, and they pulled you along. They did not accept the bare minimum from you. They expected you to graduate, and they expected you to go to school. And so when we grew up in my generation, we left here because we were told you're going to leave here. You know, it was the thing to do, is to push these kids out, to launch them. And so by the time I got to graduate from high school, I was ready. I was ready to go. I was ready to just go see what was out there. But at the same time, I did not know what it was that I didn't know how to express that feeling of oppression that I felt. There was a feeling of, there were a lot of questions in my mind. Why are the Black people all in this one little area? Why does no one have any money? Why is it so different here than what I began to know was outside of the community? Once I was in high school, I started cheerleading. I started going to other people's houses. I started going, wait a minute, why are we all over here? You know, I couldn't understand it.
Did you get any answers?
Not until I was an adult.
So do you think like the community was just like stagnant and just kind of living in its own universe?
It seems to me, Phil, honestly, that the struggles that our parents had, when they don't become our struggles anymore and we become comfortable, we kind of lose ground. So the more we try to give our children, sort of the more they stop fighting. And so I think once we got some of the things that we had been asking for as a community, the next generation thought that it was just like, oh, well, you know, that's what we have. We don't have to ask for it. They didn't fight anymore. And so we got halfway there. And then when some of the elders started passing away, there was no more fight. There was not a generation to pass the baton to.
Do you feel that that's prevalent here, though, like as just Black people in general?
I think it's in general, because when you think about the passion of Dr. King and the people who walked with him, the passion of we're going to progress as a community. And then we got to certain points in that progression and it just became comfortable. We don't even vote anymore. What is that about? People died for us to vote, and we just take it like, you know.
Well, why do you think that people don't vote? It's a personal thing, but
there's a lot of reasons, and some of them I think are justified. Some of them I think are valid.
Civil distrust, you know, government distrust. I think that's for my generation that's the biggest thing, you know.
I think a lot of it's valid. I don't disagree with that at all. But at the same time, if you don't participate in the political, not just the political process, but the political discourse, so that you're participating from a place of education, from a place of knowledge. If you don't participate, this is where we get to a place where we have someone in office who can say, yeah, slaves were happy, you know, or slavery benefited us.
That's currently happening.
Exactly.
In our state government. I want to talk about the names that you mentioned earlier. Harry Moore.
Harry T. Moore.
Harry T. Moore and Harry V. Moore.
That's right.
They are probably the biggest names in Mims.
Yes.
But also is based off a tragedy.
Yes, it is.
Can you explain briefly the story behind them and why they mean so much to Mims?
I think what I say is that it is first of all, so Emmett Till was the catalyst, the spark for Rosa Parks, right? It was a few months after the murder of Emmett Till that Rosa Parks decided, I'm not getting up. I'm not gonna move. And she was inspired by, and I think she was, to a degree, she was just tired and she was angry about what happened to Emmett Till. All of that happened in 1955. Okay. Dr. Moore was assassinated. I should say Mr. Moore was assassinated in 1951. So he was a predecessor. He was before the whole civil rights movement, right? And that was when he was assassinated. So the work he was doing was even before that. So we're talking about a real pioneer of the civil rights movement, and people don't know that that happened right here in Mims. And that's the part that I feel like if we're not telling that story, our children are looking around at East Mims and not understanding that this is a place that we should be saying, we should be proud to be from here. And that pride should lead us to want to preserve our community. But if you don't know, or if you have a government that wants to downplay your contributions and downplay the whole history, the whole arc of history of our community, then you get what we got, which is not understanding who we are, not understanding the power that what we changed, how we changed the direction of history. If you don't know it, then you sit here and say, well, I can't. Well, this is not going to work out for me. No, there's power inside of you. Access it and leverage it and yield it, you know?
Yeah. I asked some younger people this question regarding Black history in school and just Black history in general. So I'm going to ask you, why do you think that so many young Black people are disinterested, or maybe they seem disconnected with learning about Black history? I can tell you the answer that they told me.
What did they tell you?
Is that they feel that the Black history that is taught to them is all trauma. So they're burnt out on the trauma, and so they kind of disassociate from it.
I can see that.
So what is your opinion on that?
I can see that point of view. However, I also fear that if we leave behind the trauma, that we're leaving behind half of the truth. If we don't see that despite this trauma, despite everything that we've been through, look at how we have risen to the top of everything. If we don't see that, you will not understand the resilience that's a part of your DNA. You know, and that part of it, I think that's the part that is keeping us locked in certain cycles. Because for me, for this community, somebody has lied to us. Somebody has told us that there are no paths out. And we don't understand that if there are no paths out, I got a hatchet, I got a machete, I got whatever I need. And I'm not talking about using that stuff on people, but if there's no path, I can make a path. Our people have been so brilliant and so resilient and so resourceful and innovative that lock me in a box. What box? You know what I mean? There's a line in, I don't know if I should say this.
Say it.
There's a line in one of my books where one character says to another one, something about how someone is saying that Black people are inferior to something. You know, he was saying, well, maybe that's just the truth, that Black people are just inferior. And the character says back to him, well, 150 years ago, we were enslaved. Fast forward 150 years, and we're sitting in your White House. So if we're inferior, I'm trying to figure out who, to whom. To whom? Because they don't exist in this nation. Because within 150 years, we're at the top of this nation, having come from slavery. So someone has lied to our people. And when you don't know your history, they can lie to you.
That's deep. That's a deep one. I wanted to talk about one of your other pillars, though. The advocacy and social commentary. We're kind of on that. We're kind of on that field right now. Like, what are some key justice elements that are important to you right now that you would like to share, or that issues that you want to actually highlight in this community or nationwide?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things in this community is I think we need to understand that there are resources flowing through this county, and they are skipping us. So if we don't know it, if we don't know that other parts of the county get more funding or get more resources, then how do we notify for it?
Do you think that's deliberate, though? Like, do you think that the information is just out there, but it's not known? Like, it's not like, hey, this is what's available to you on purpose?
No, I don't know if it's on purpose or not. I think that we are complicit in that you have to, there's money flowing. You got to jump in. You got to get yourself a pipe. You got to do something. Because if you don't make any, what do they say? The squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not squeaking, everybody's like, oh, they happy. Now at the same time, I would think that if I was a government official or someone who understands how these processes work, I might look at a map and say, hey, you know what? This area right here is left out. But I will say that honestly, since I've started this development group, since I've started our organization, there are larger organizations or umbrella organizations that get money from the powers that be that trickles down, and they've been saying, we're not putting any money there. We want to put money there. So can you give us a proposal? Can you tell us what you need? Because they recognize that the money's not coming here, but nobody's asked for it.
So what happens to it?
It gets redirected in other areas.
So even if money is allocated to this area and no one, I guess, claims it, it just goes away?
Well, this is the deal. The money is generally allocated to a municipality. So it's allocated to the county. And that's as far down as the direction's going to go.
So all the way from here to Palm Bay?
Well, Vieira is where the county seat is.
Oh, man.
But it gets allocated like from the federal government to the state to the county, or sometimes from the federal government directly to the county, right? Once it gets to the county has some discretion in where it goes, and the squeaky wheel is going to get the oil. Is
there any opportunities that you think need to be, or any wheels that need to be oiled where there's money available? Like
we're I had one of my staff members. I was like, well, I need to be in the office every day, and she said, well, why? What do you do? That's what I do. I find out where this money's flowing, and I write the proposals, and I go and I find out where we can get this funding from, and that's basically what my role is in this organization, is to make sure that the resources are flowing into this community.
Okay, so if you haven't seen this by now, you're very educated. You're very well versed in education, ministry, your community. What experiences most shaped you in that way?
I think what we were just talking about is growing up here and wondering why are things the way they are? Why? Like, it's not fair. I don't understand it. And then starting to peel back certain things and just dig into it and not come at it from a place of this is just straight racism. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just what we said. You're not squeaking, and we don't know that we should be. And like you said, the county seat is all the way down in Vieira.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit in a session earlier about the struggle. Everybody is struggling to make it day to day. So who has time to go say, well, there's a county commission meeting that I'm going to go to? Who has time to say, well, the library board is meeting today? Nobody. It's like, I'm just trying to get the kids to football practice and back, So I think there's just a matter of you got to have somebody who is focused on these things, and not everybody has time for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to go back a little bit, back in time, not to our previous conversation, but the year 2020 was probably the worst year that happened for so many other people. But for you, it was a different story. How did you find the drive to do what you had to do when the world was on fire?
Yeah.
Even in the Black community, George Floyd happened in May of 2020. So how were you able to stay focused in a time like that?
Phil, honestly, you say how when the world was on fire, it was because the world was on fire. It was and personally, not even just the stuff that was happening in the world, but my mom passed away that year. So it was just okay, nothing is ever going to be the same again. Ever. So this is the moment. This is the moment to take a leap. And I had written the book Standing on the Precipice, which was basically talking about how 2019 was 400 years since the first slave ships landed in Virginia. I think it was Virginia. And how 400 years to me, as looking at it from a spiritual perspective, it was like time for the children of Israel to come out of Egypt. You know, it's time. It's a time of jubilee, is what it's called in the scriptures. Time of restoration and freedom. And I said, okay, it's my jubilee too. I'm up out of here. I'm gonna go because it was also for me understanding that concept of jubilee. It's a time of unusual favor. So the way I took it was, it's a time of unusual favor where I can't lose. If I'm ever going to do it, now's the moment. And I took that leap.
So so we're here now. What actually makes you happy? What's rewarding for you?
I think walking through this building that was granted to us by the housing authority, the Brevard County Housing Authority. I used to be in here by myself. I used to be in here by myself every day, answering the phones, doing whatever needed to be done, and scared, not knowing if everything was going to work out, you know. And I think it was quite a transition. First of all, to stop working from my home office and actually come to a place. That was quite a transition. And then going from being in this place by myself to like now there's, 5 people around. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so much noise and there's so But what makes me happy is that there are people now who are invested in this vision. There are people who believe in something that came out of here. It's like I look around and I'm like, wow, it just kind of mushroomed and materialized. And that overwhelms me. That does.
Can we talk about your father?
Yes, anytime.
Yeah, I see his pictures downstairs.
Yes.
A lot of people when they interview people, they ask them who's somebody that inspired you. I already know.
Yeah.
So can you tell everybody about your father?
My dad, Bob Tooley, was one of the first Black engineers at the Space Center. And his story was so much like Katherine Johnson in The Hidden Figures. He came from this little tiny town where he was teaching school, and he heard that they were hiring at the Space Center. And my dad was just my sister's funny because I'll say he's just the most brilliant man I've ever known. He was just, to me, he was brilliant. To me, he could do no wrong. He was just, that was my daddy. And I learned, I was actually traveling with, this name is big, but maybe not a whole lot of people know it, Charlie Blackwell Thompson.
Okay.
She is the first female launch director in NASA history. Okay?
Wow.
And when I was at the Space Center, I was her comm person. So I would travel with her. I would write things for her, speeches, talking points, presentations, and so forth. And we became pretty close. So we're driving in the middle of Utah, going to an engine firing, an engine testing for the Artemis rocket. And we're out near the Golden Spike in Utah. If you Google that, you'll see what that's a big deal. But
All right. Sounds weird, but okay.
It was like where several railroads met back at, it's a big deal. But we're out there driving in the middle of Utah. And I mentioned my dad's name. And she said, wait a minute, who? And so I said, well, Bob Tooley. And she said, that's your dad? And I was like, yeah, that's my father. And she said, he used to be my supervisor. I used to work for him. And that blew me away. Because this Black man was a supervisor in the firing rooms at the Space Center. That's like,
unheard of.
Yeah, back at that time. So I think just that sort of just lifted me, knowing that, because we knew my dad worked out there. We know what he did,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so ending up at NASA myself, he told me one time as I was talking to him about something, he was like, yeah, that's the same floor, the same building that I used to work at. And I was like, really?
That's awesome.
So yeah, it was a pretty cool, just like full circle kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my dad was a phenomenal man. He was also a Bible teacher, Bible student. It wasn't enough to read the Bible and learn the Bible. He had to go back to the Greek and the Hebrew so that he could make sure that he was learning the right stuff.
All right.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. He's just very intellectual.
Nice. Did your father ever? Because he was you said the first Black.
One of the first.
Okay, one of the first Black. Was it
engineers?
Engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Did he ever have the talk with you, like the racial talk with you? And you have sisters, don't you?
I do. I have a sister and a brother.
Okay, so did you guys ever have that conversation as a family?
I don't think we had it as a family. I think as we were going through school in this environment, when things would happen, racially motivated things, or we were, discriminated against in some way, my dad always had some clapback. He always had, well, next time tell him this, or say this or whatever. And my dad was one of those guys who came through the whole let's sit at the Woolworths counter, the sit-ins and the protests and the marches. He was that guy. Mm. And so he always had something to say back to them. And it was just, he was a fighter, a fighter when it came to race stuff. Yeah.
What do you think he would say today about some of the racial injustice that's happening?
I think he would say that we're not engaging enough, we're not fighting enough, we're not pushing back enough. Mm. I think most people from his generation would say that.
In this day and age where everything is readily available, TV, internet, everything is at our disposal, how do we as a people come together to raise, not raise hell, but raise attention to that if there's so many other, I'm trying to think the word here, but there's so many branches.
Our voices are diluted.
Yeah.
Diluted. And anybody can get a platform, unfortunately. I think that's the scary part. I think back in Dr. King's day, in order to get the notoriety that he got, you had to be something, right? Nowadays, you just need a mic and a camera. So we got so many voices, so many different opinions, and we're not galvanizing behind any one voice.
Got it.
And I think that is unfortunate. And then also I put the onus on us, because who is speaking for more than themselves? Who is speaking for the greater community and not just for the, like the kids say, doing it for the gram, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that's also challenging. So.
Okay. So before we transition into the Queen's Table, because I definitely want to know more about the podcast and the vision of the podcast, tell me a secret about you that Nobody knows that you're
Oh, my
revealing
goodness.
the first time on the podcast.
That's hard.
What's something that what's something that not many people know about you then that you would like to say?
I'm really boring. I don't have that many secrets. I'm so boring. Ask my sister. She says that I'm extremely boring. I love gospel rap.
That's actually a question I was going to ask you. No, see, you know, okay. So I do a lot of podcasts, right?
Uh-huh.
And I do some other Christian shows, right? And the question came up was like, music is evolving. You know, why are people disassociating from the church?
Mm-hmm.
How do you, because you are an ordained
I am.
minister, right? Maybe maybe y'all didn't know that. So how do you feel about Christian hip hop or Christian rap or Christian trap music? The way music is now in our culture has now adapted the Christian mindset. So how do you feel about that? Because some people in the religion hate it.
Yeah.
And some people love it. So tell me, well, how do you feel about that?
I freaking love Christian rap. And I love it because it's real, it's raw, it's authentic. And if we don't get to that place where we are hearing these young people and what they're saying, if we don't get to that place, I said it before, we will go the way of the dinosaur. We will just become extinct because we're no longer relevant. And the kids that we have, the kids that are coming up right now, they are different. And if you don't learn how to engage with them, we're going to lose them. And once the older people, go the way they're going, we're going, the kids aren't going to, there's just not going to be a church. There's not going to be an appreciation for, and I don't want to say religion because I don't like religion, but at least appreciation for God, for Jesus, for an understanding, a knowledge. But going back to music, we were having a conversation with some young ladies earlier, and it's just we got to get out of the struggle gospel, right? We got to stop climbing up the rough side of the mountain, and the baby need a new pair of shoes, and how I'm gonna pay my light bill, that kind of stuff. If we don't find more victory music, like what I hear in some of the raps, what I hear in Pastor Mike and I forgot the other guy's name, Anthony Brown, and there's some out there that have some music that lifts you up and makes you feel like you can do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it too. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but is there any artists in particular that's hard to do when you think of it? I know Lecrae is probably the biggest one out there. But
Lecrae is really, really good. And I mean, some of his music, it just hits. I mean, it's real, right?
Yeah.
The other guy that I like, he's more
chill.
No, he's not more chill. Andy Mineo. I know he's an Italian guy, believe it or not. But I think he's the best. I really do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Okay, so let's get into the Queen's Table. This is a brand new podcast for everybody. It's going to be on all the platforms, so Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google, whatever podcast platform you watch or you listen to, it'll be on. All right, so take us behind the scenes here. What was your inspiration for starting the Queen's Table? Tell me about the name, and then how you came together with your crew.
The Queen's Table is it's been a long time. It's been percolating for a long time. And I will say, after my mom passed away, I was already ordained at that time. I think I got ordained in 2013, I think. She left me responsible for her ministry. And so that was a heavy load, right? I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to be traditional. I knew I did not want to be one of those churches that had church every Sunday and take up an offering and blah, blah, blah. I don't want that. There's enough of those in this community. We don't need another one. So the first thing that I said, I was like, okay, I'm going to start this podcast, and it's going to be called The Queen's Table, and it's going to blah, 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 blah. And so I put it out there. First, it was going to be on Facebook Live. It wasn't going to be a podcast. It was going to be on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
And I was going to do it myself.
Okay.
You know? And so I, started talking about it a little bit and put it out there. It flopped miserably.
Really? What happened? You got no response or something?
Yeah, I got no response. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I don't think I took the time to build a listenership. But that first one that I did, I got on Facebook Live. Nobody was there. Mm-hmm. So I took a couple steps back and said, okay, this obviously is not either the right timing or the right thing. I'm not sure which. And so now, after 3 years of doing this work in the community, I felt like, okay, it's time to circle back, and we're going to do it as a podcast. I think, though, there were little breadcrumbs along the way that let me know it's time. It's time to revive that. Mm-hmm. There were young ladies that were saying, I heard one young lady say, I'm a pastor's daughter, and my mom just died. She said it like a couple years ago, and her sister were struggling with some things, and they were just like, and we don't have anybody to talk to. We don't know who to talk to. Like, they're looking for someone that was older, that had some wisdom to give them, and they didn't know where to look. That broke my heart. And then I see young women that are hungry for a role model. And I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can be that. But that's why, like you said, tell you about the title. Queen's Table has an apostrophe behind the S. This is not my table. This is a table where we can bring a community of queens together. And if I don't have what you need, then this queen over here might. And if I can't speak directly to your hurt or to your desire, well, she might have it. So we want to come together and be a support system. I just feel like there's such a dearth of good female role models. We're putting people out there. This generation is putting people out there that don't have the depth of character, don't have any wisdom, and are completely opposite of the values that our community has been raised on. Just don't have any values. No values.
Okay. So you want to spotlight a bunch of different voices, the other queens.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you're going to have guests, right?
Yes.
Is there do you have a dream guest in mind? Just say anybody, you can just throw somebody's name out there, but let's put it out there in the universe. Is there anybody in particular that you would love to have on the show, male or female?
Michelle Obama, yeah.
Oprah. Look in the camera. I'm going to send this to her. Tell her.
Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, who is the lady? DuVernay, Ava DuVernay. Those types of folks. These women that I don't think are Oprah and Michelle definitely household names, but there are some women out there who are standing in a space that it's like once she steps out of that space, who's going to come behind her? And I don't feel like we're grooming the young queens for that. We need to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's deep. And I think there is a gap.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a gap because Michelle Obama set a huge standard there.
Yeah. And I'm not to diminish anyone or to, I don't want to attack another queen, but when our role models are people who are former exotic dancers, I guess I'll call them, or former, those types of things, we need to find some role models that are fully clothed and using the power of our intellect, I will tell you this. Now I'm gonna go a little bit off script here.
We ain't got no script anyway, so what are you talking about?
So as a minister, one of the things that I do when I study is there's a principle in theology called the principle of first mention. So wherever something is first mentioned in Scripture is at its purest, highest form, right? Wherever it's first mentioned in Scripture. So I was testing that theory. And one of the things I was like, what about a queen? You know, where's a queen first mentioned in Scripture? And immediately your head would go to Queen Esther, because she the whole book about Esther. Of course, she's the first queen in the Bible. And I found out that's not true. I found out that the first queen mentioned in the Bible is the Queen of Sheba, the Black woman who came from she came from the South, I think, but she came to see Solomon. And I was like, so that is what a queen is. This woman who is self-sufficient, independent, has her own identity, you know, and she came to hear Solomon's wisdom. But if you can't appreciate wisdom unless you understand wisdom, right? So she had wisdom of her own to bring to the table. But I think we have totally misconstrued what being a queen is. We're doing the Miss America thing. That is not a queen, someone who just sits on a throne and looks pretty. That's not enough. Our queens, our African queens, went to war. Our African queens led nations, you know. Queen Amani Reines, that was a bad girl in Africa. She thwarted, I think it was Caesar Augustus for 5 years. He wanted to take over Ethiopia, and she was like, nope, buddy, it's not happening. Her and her warriors, whoever they were. That's what a queen is. Standing up for your community and saying, nope, not here. It's not going to happen here. You know, that's what a queen is. And we need more queens at this table. And we need to be raising queens behind us.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think that's a perfect jumping off point here. I mean, a lot was said, and I love what your definition of what a queen is, and I think the youth see it differently. What they see, obviously what they see on Instagram or any other things, you know, that's boss bitch, you know.
Yeah.
But like,
exactly.
they think that's what a queen is, and you know, maybe their vision's a little misguided. So I'm excited to see what the future of this podcast is. But my final question for you is that let's fast forward.
Okay.
5 years from now, right? Give me an update on Tooley Community Development Group and the Queen's Table. Where are we at?
That's a good question. And I definitely have a vision of that. Our organization owns 5 parcels of land here in East Mims. And there is one that is where my mother's church stood or still stands. And we call that parcel Holy Ground. So on most of the parcels, we'll be building affordable housing. That parcel has to be something different. And so we are envisioning a sort of a service center that also encompasses a dormitory-style homeless shelter. So it'll have offices, it'll have a kitchen, it'll have laundry facilities, and so forth. So I see that thing being up and running. And I don't know whether the podcast studio will be in this building or in that one, but we'll have a bigger studio. And we'll have over 1 million downloads. Okay. Now, the other thing about 5 years from now is we will have affordable housing that people can rent. So when we're bringing in people right now and we're helping people and we're helping them to not become homeless, there's very little that we can do for the people who are currently homeless. And so I want to have the resources to solve that problem as well.
Wow. Touching words. I think what you just said, I mean, great vision. You know, I look forward to seeing that and what's going to happen. So you have any final words to say goodbye to your audience for the first time, you know?
Well, I want to welcome, or I want to invite everyone, all of our women in the community, to the Queen's Table. We want to be that resource for you. We want to be able to build community with the women, not just in this community, but anyone who needs it, to the women that need it.
All right. Well, I guess we will catch you guys later.
All right. Thank you, Phil.
All right. See you guys.